If you struggle with eating too much sugar, I want to show you a way out. Now, before we get into this video, I'm going to give you two choices. If you are not willing to sit through this video and absorb the wisdom and strategies I'm going to share, and you're truly not ready to give up the foods that are making you sick, then let me free you now. Take the blue pill and go watch something else. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you or someone you know has suffered from eating white sugar more times than you can count, whether that's experiencing diabetes, lethargy, sores that are slow to heal, dry skin, brain fog, digestive issues, and sugar addiction, among others, then I invite you to take the red pill. Sit back and prepare to have your life change forever and for the better. Smart choice. You stuck around. Let's begin. Now, this isn't your first time trying to detox from sugar. In the past, you probably followed conventional nutrition advice that suggested things like, just stop eating sugar and go cold turkey. Or, anytime you want a piece of cake or candy or a cookie, just eat a piece of fruit instead. Y'all, you've already tried this, and you're here because it didn't work. I know, because when I did this, I could barely get through the withdrawals of sugar cravings. If your body is addicted to sugar, fruit is not going to help. But these four things will, especially if you come from a culture whose foodways have been colonized and your body is addicted to sugar. First, you gotta decolonize your diet and your mindset around food. When I was beginning my sugar detox process, I visited a former sugar plantation in St. Martin. While I was hiking up that rocky, hilly plantation, I became aware of how gruesome and grim life and work as an enslaved African was on this plantation. And then shortly after, I returned to Brooklyn, and I was hired to train a group of community chefs. In that training, I shared the history of the Europeans' insatiable appetite for white sugar and its connection to the enslavement of Black and brown bodies to feed them. It was evident that the history of slavery and sugar plantations was still plaguing us today. I want you to think about yourself or someone you know, perhaps a relative. Do you know anyone with diabetes? Do you know anyone who suffers from hyperactivity or brain fog and sluggishness shortly after eating sugar? The effects are real, and our bodies and our brains are not equipped to handle it. And if you've ever looked at the molecule of white sugar under a microscope, it resembles a blade, and it has sharp edges on either end. Imagine for a moment that sharp-bladed molecule traveling through your bloodstream. What do you think it's doing to your arteries, to your organs? From slavery to sugar, this has never been a vital nutrient nor source of vitality for Black nor brown bodies. Now, this brings me to my second advice on detoxing from white sugar. You need to consider your ancestral foodways. Before greedy and heartless Europeans and their American descendants enslaved Africans and indigenous folks to forcefully labor their sugar plantations and forcefully remove Africans and indigenous people from their lands, Africans throughout their diaspora had their own relationship to food that often did not include a dessert culture nor heavy amounts of sweet foods. One of my favorite food writers, Yemisi Aribasala, wrote that in Nigeria, there is no culture of jam eating or dessert eating at the end of meals because the Yoruba adult has an incongruous relationship with sweets and sugar. We regard sweet as potent as poison. There should really be no cultural agreement in which you give children something that is believed to be deadly. In the Yoruba culture, There's a pot of boiling herbs in case someone overindulges a sweet tooth. And this pot of herbs is always punishingly bitter, both a palliative and a seminar. Anyone who eats too many sweets is going to be plagued with hemorrhoids. She also goes on to share that due to Western, European, and American influence, there is a culture of having the ceremonial cake at affairs and events, yet it's really just there as a centerpiece and fanfare representing their understanding of trends. She says that they call it the akara o yimbo, which basically means the white man's cake, not ours. Their culture has a wisdom that predates European influence, and it is too refined to eat such a poison. And if they do, they have their roots and their herbs to remedy the damaging effects. Now I want you to think about your culture and your roots. Whether your people hail from Brazil, Jamaica, Panama, the Carolinas, the Fiji Islands, or India, you are rooted in a rich cultural heritage that has its own culinary and dietary wisdom. And before colonization, slavery, or capitalism, there was a foodway that was in full service to your indigenous melanated body. I started to eat more of my ancestral foods, and I realized quickly that cupcakes and cookies were never part of it. Now this brings me to my third advice. Where did those cupcakes and those cookies come from? A colonized and capitalist system that programmed my mindset to believe that eating sugar would make me happy, thus creating an emotional connection to and emotional dependence on white sugar. If you're not dealing with your emotional connection to sugar, then detoxing is going to be pointless. Let me share a story that starts in 5th grade. I was living in Rotterdam at the time, and up until that point, I ate under the guidance and watchful eye of my parents, specifically my mom. That is until Miss Vanden Bosch's birthday party. Oh, yeah, listen. This party was planned by a bunch of 5th graders, which meant that the menu consisted of chips, soda, cookies, cupcakes, and candy. And that day, I inhaled everything sweet on that table. Later that night, I threw up and I suffered an incredible stomachache. And that was the start of my binge and emotional eating on sugary things. As I grew up, I used sweet foods to shift my negative feelings. Oreos and brown sugar Pop-Tarts got me through my parents' divorce when I was 16. And in my 20s, I routinely cheated on my man with brownies. It was easier for me to open up to a pan of warm, chocolatey brownies than it was to be vulnerable to the men I was dating. It wasn't until my 30s when I began to actually heed the revolt and warnings that sugar triggered in my digestive system. And that eventually led me to finally deal with my emotional connection to white sugar. You see, what started as an innocent emotion of joy on that fateful day at Miss Vanden Bosch's birthday party evolved into a seductive, sugary escape from any negative feelings. Now, you might be resonating with this because you find yourself running to sugar too. Everything I've shared thus far has to do with the mental, emotional, cultural, societal, and historical relationship that we have to white sugar. But what about the physical body? Especially if you're feeling plagued by dis-ease and discomfort caused by eating food with white sugar. Well, this brings me to my 4th advice: plant medicine. Remember I shared about the Yoruba custom of drinking bitter herbs following an overindulgence of sweet? Well, I was kind of doing my own version of that for years, and you've probably done this too. I have tried juice fasts and raw food detoxes over and over again. And to their credit, within 3 days of doing them, my sugar cravings would subside. But as soon as that fast or that cleanse or that detox was done, I would return shortly after to my old ways of overeating starchy, sugary comfort foods because I hadn't dealt with the emotional aspect of my eating. And we also know that just drinking juice or eating raw foods all the time isn't always sustainable. How many of you have done the Daniel fast in January, and then once February, March comes around, you back to your old ways? because you need something more. And that's when I began to realize that I couldn't do this alone. I was struggling with emotional eating, overindulging on sugary foods, and how hard it was for me, even me who teaches this with all my knowledge and wisdom. Well, maybe not wisdom, because if I was wise enough, I would have stopped, but all my knowledge for sure, to stop eating sugar. I needed God and spiritual obedience, not discipline. And I found that through a plant medicine called ayahuasca. Now, I share more about my ayahuasca experience and the lessons that she shared with me in a separate video, which is linked down below. But what I'll say here is that she, Mama Aya, aka ayahuasca, in her ancient plant wisdom, went into my body, gathered every bit of sugar that was plaguing my system, and purged it completely. So much so that even the vomit tasted sweet, y'all. And after that, my taste buds were forever changed. And because of the work that I was doing previously to address my mental and emotional connections to food and white sugar, my brain was rewired. I no longer saw sugary foods as a treat nor a reward. I no longer craved cakes and cookies. I even started enjoying fruits like Granny Smith apples as opposed to only mangoes. Plants like ayahuasca, bitter herbs, and unsweetened green juices have the power to clean you from the inside out. And sometimes, because of the deep roots of sugar addiction that you might experience, you need plants with deep roots. They will heal and they will restore your indigenous black and brown body to its God-given, powerful, vital, well self. Remember, the truth is, cakes, ice cream, cookies, candy bars, pies, crumbles, tarts, cupcakes, they're all vehicles through which sugar is delivered to the body. They are appetizing tricks to get you to gulp down the white sugar, which has scientifically been proven to be a deadly, silent, slow killer of bodies and brains. Which is why, if you're going to eat them, your cookies, your cake, your candy, you gotta upgrade your ingredients. And you are on the right channel for that. Hello. I will link some refined sugar-free recipes that I've created on this channel below. So let me ask you, are you ready to detox from white sugar? If you are, come, let me help you. Over at the Mindful Nutrition School, I teach a course called The Detox, where we dive deep into the historical, societal, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual aspects of food as it relates to your personal relationship with food. And then we transform it. And if you want to experience true transformation, not a 10-day juice cleanse, let's talk. Sign up below and I'll see you in your inbox. Until next time, eat well, decolonize your diet well, and be well.